The first crack came quietly, almost politely, when the man in the tailored charcoal suit laughed under his breath and corrected the waitress's English in front of the entire dining room, and the sound landed heavier than any slap ever could. Her hand froze mid-air, the leather menu trembling between her fingers, and for a split second the sunlight pouring through the tall restaurant windows seemed to dim, as if the room itself was ashamed of what had just happened. If you're watching Kindness Diaries and you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, pause for a moment right now and like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like this exist because kindness still matters. Her name was Era Qureshi, and she had learned long ago how to smile while bleeding inside. At 27, she carried herself with quiet discipline, hair pulled into a neat bun, vest pressed perfectly, name tag polished before every shift. The fine dining restaurant sat on the edge of a financial district, all glass walls and white linen, a place where power lunches happened under crystal lights and decisions worth millions were made over plates that cost more than her weekly groceries. Era worked daytime shifts because mornings were calmer and because by evening her mother's medicine wore off and needed refilling. Every step she took between tables was measured, every word carefully pronounced, because English was her second language and she had paid for every lesson with exhaustion and sacrifice. The man who laughed was Victor Hallstrom, a billionaire investor whose presence bent rooms around him. His silver hair was combed back with effortless arrogance, his cufflinks catching the light like small declarations of wealth. He had arrived with an entourage of lawyers and executives, contracts already signed, smiles already rehearsed. To him, this lunch was a formality before announcing a massive acquisition, a victory lap served with wine. When Era had pointed gently at a page on the menu and said the word clause with the slightest accent, he had corrected her pronunciation loudly, theatrically, enjoying the way nearby tables looked over. The humiliation was casual to him, forgettable. To her, it was another reminder of where the world believed she belonged. Era nodded, apologized without words, and continued her service. Inside, old memories stirred. Her father hunched over ledgers at their small printing shop, explaining contracts to clients who trusted him because he was honest, not because he was rich. The day that shop was taken from them through a legal loophole buried in fine print. The night her father sat silently at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, before his heart finally gave out months later. After his death, Era had inherited not money, but an obsession with understanding words, especially the ones designed to trap people. Between clearing plates and refilling glasses, she noticed something odd. Victor's folder lay open near the edge of the table, a thick document stamped confidential in bold letters. Her eyes caught a familiar structure as she passed by, the rhythm of legal language she had studied late at night after double shifts. A specific clause number jumped out, one she recognized because it had once destroyed her family. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. The restaurant hummed with polite laughter and clinking cutlery, sunlight bouncing off polished surfaces. Outside, the city moved fast, unaware that so. Life had tested Era in quiet ways, never dramatic enough to make headlines. She had learned to swallow pride, to let insults slide because rent was due and her mother depended on her. But this was different. This was not about pride. This was about a secret clause designed to crush smaller partners once the deal was public, a clause that transferred liability in a way most signatories would never notice until it was too late. A clause Victor was counting on no one seeing. As lunch progressed, Victor grew more relaxed, laughing louder, basking in his own importance. He barely looked at Era anymore, except when she refilled his glass, his eyes sliding over her as if she were part of the furniture. She felt the familiar sting of invisibility, but also its strange power. Invisible people notice things others didn't. Her break came when one of Victor's lawyers asked for a clarification about a term, misusing it slightly. Victor waved him off, confident, careless. Era stood there with the water jug, heart pounding so loudly she was sure someone could hear it. She imagined her mother's tired smile that morning, the unpaid bills folded carefully in her bag, her father's voice explaining why contracts mattered. Her knees almost buckled under the weight of the moment. She leaned in just enough, pointing gently at the document, the same way she had pointed at the menu earlier. Her finger hovered over the page, steady now, and she indicated the clause number, her voice calm despite the storm inside. She didn't correct his English this time. She corrected his future. The table fell silent in stages. First the lawyers noticed, their expressions shifting from boredom to alarm. Then Victor followed their gaze, his confident smile thinning as he read the lines he had assumed no one else would ever read closely. Color drained from his face, replaced by something raw and unguarded. The secret clause was no longer secret. For a moment, Era expected anger, security being called, her job evaporating in seconds. Instead, something else happened. The room felt suspended, like the pause before a storm breaks. Victor looked up at her, really looked, seeing not a waitress with imperfect English, but a woman who had just dismantled his advantage with quiet precision. Era stepped back, hands clasped, every muscle burning with the effort of standing tall. Years of swallowing injustice surged up, threatening to drown her. She thought of how easily this man had mocked her, how casually he wielded power, and how fragile that power suddenly looked. The deal didn't collapse dramatically. There were no raised voices, no public scene. It unraveled the way lies often do, slowly and painfully, as lawyers whispered urgently and documents were gathered back into folders. Victor's entourage left earlier than planned, the victory lunch unfinished. When the restaurant returned to its usual rhythm, Era retreated to the staff hallway and finally let herself breathe. Tears came then, hot and uncontrollable, not from fear but from release. She had crossed an invisible line and survived. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Had she done the right thing? Would there be consequences she couldn't outrun? The answer came unexpectedly, in daylight, not shadows. Victor returned alone an hour later, without his suit jacket, without his audience. He asked to speak with her, not as an order but as a request. The manager hovered nervously, but Victor insisted. He stood there, stripped of bravado, holding the weight of a near disaster he hadn't anticipated. He acknowledged what she had seen, what she had understood. He didn't apologize eloquently, his words were awkward, pride still bruised. But there was honesty in his eyes, the kind that comes when someone realizes the world is larger than their own reflection. Era listened, heart guarded but open. She didn't ask for money, or favors. She asked him to remove the clause entirely, not just for this deal, but as a practice. To stop building success on traps. It was a small request on paper, a massive one in spirit. Victor agreed, not because he was forced, but because for the first time in a long time, someone had reminded him of consequences beyond profit. He left again, quieter this time, carrying more than documents with him. Before the final moments of this story, drop a comment below and tell us what this moment made you feel. Weeks later, Era received an envelope, thick and formal. Inside was an offer to fund her legal education, no strings attached, through an independent foundation Victor had set up quietly. She cried holding that letter, not because of the opportunity, but because someone had finally seen her fully. If this story touched your heart, please support it by liking, sharing, and staying with Kindness Diaries. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Era still worked daytime shifts for a while, still tied her hair back neatly and polished her name tag. But something inside her had changed forever. She no longer walked invisibly through the world. She understood now that kindness and courage could coexist, that even the softest voice could shake the foundations of power when guided by truth. And as sunlight continued to pour through those tall windows each day, it illuminated not just tables and plates, but the quiet reminder that dignity, once claimed, can never be taken away again.